Good evening, everyone. We'll call the City Council meeting for August 1, 2011 to order. First order of business is roll call and determination of the quorum. Charlene?
Nordstrom. Here. Mason. Here. Doyle. Here. Sasso. Here. Davis. Here. Peterson. Here. Roberts. Here. Brown. Here. Wright. Here. We have quorum.
Next order of business is the invocation. Do we have our pastor here tonight? We'll recognize Steve Selfridge from First Wesleyan Church. Everyone rise.
Let's pray. Lord, I thank you for this evening. I thank you for these elected officials representing us. I pray that you would be with each of them, provide them wisdom, counsel as they dream and plan for our future city. I pray, Lord, for a couple of families within our community who are grieving the loss of teenagers. It's got to be a difficult situation. I pray that you would be with each of those. But it also represents other family members who have lost older loved ones, as well as younger ones. And at times such as these, we grieve with those. So I pray that you would be with these families. I pray that as this meeting unfolds, that you would help this council and the members who are in this auditorium to be sensible and logical and reasonable. And I pray that you would help us to honor you in each thing we do. Thank you, Lord. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Recognize Council President Dave Davis for a moment of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make sure that the public is aware, because it's been a little bit quiet. Former councilman, former council president Ron Kroger, who served the city very proudly for many, many years, has been quite ill lately. Had a carotid artery that was clogged, went in to have that cleaned out, and had a series of strokes, and has been in intensive care and was just moved to cardiac rehab just a couple days ago. So he is now able to receive cards and such. So those of you that knew and enjoyed his company may want to send a message to him and keep him in your thoughts and prayers. Thank you for the privilege, Mayor.
Our next order of business is to adopt the agenda. Do we have any additions to tonight's agenda? I recognize Pauline Sumption, our finance officer. Pauline.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two items, 64A, I believe, and 64B. 64A will be a report on the mayor's veto of the contract for the solid waste study. 64B would be the proposed budget schedule for August 4th and August 8th, and I would just like acknowledgement on that when I get to that.
Okay. Any additional items? We'll recognize our Assistant City Attorney, Joel Landine.
Thank you, Mayor. We would request item number 74 after the executive session. Request for action on executive session item number CA 2011-003.
Okay. Any additional items? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the agenda with the changes noted? So moved. We have a motion by Brown and a second by Peterson to approve the agenda with three additions, item 64A, 64B, and 74. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Agenda has been adopted. Next order of business is to approve the minutes for the July 18 regular council meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Mason, second by Roberts. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Awards and recognitions, we do not have any tonight, so we'll move on to item number 1. Prior to that, actually, we have our general public comment period. This is a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the council on any issue not on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting on any issue not on the agenda except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the council members present. I do not have any general speaker request forms. All the ones I have are for specific items. Is there anyone that would like to speak on an item that is not on tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item number 1. This is a report from the Rapid City Public Library Board from Greta Chapman and Sandra McNeely.
Good evening, and thank you again for the opportunity. We really appreciate this opportunity to come before you twice a year to at least put our faces together and share some overview of what is happening with the library. We'd like to welcome Ron as our new liaison. Looking forward to working with you, and we're certainly shaken by the news of Ron Kroger after all of his years of service and support to the library. Our thoughts and prayers will surely be with him. But welcome to you, Ron. We're really looking forward to developing the relationship and working with you. Tonight we have with us board member Laura Patterson and our county liaison David Seeger, as well as our director Greta Chapman. You have a link to our 2010 year in review. I certainly am not going to read it in detail, but just want to point out a few highlights or a general overview of the statistics that you have before you. We continue to see tremendous increases in services, not only in traditional services, increases in library card holders, increases in traditional circulation, but we're also fast and furiously having those types of tremendous increases in our web-based, our internet services. In fact, hundreds of percents, 200s, and over 300% in some cases as you review that report. So nationally, there are also some statistics there for your reference, and you'll see that the Rapid City Public Library continues to exceed many of the national averages as well. We're really proud of the staff, the working relationship that we have with the city and with our various partners. It takes a lot of people working together to achieve those kinds of results, and we appreciate your support and input. Tomorrow the board will be spending the morning with the staff, working on reviewing our strategic plan and making sure that we continue to look forward to the future and prepare to meet those ever-changing needs of our city, of our citizens and the city in these very dynamic and changing times. So I don't want to read the report to you, just appreciate the opportunity to be able to have an opportunity to be with you and welcome any questions. And if you have any, I'll turn them over to Greta because I'm just a board member.
Any questions from council members? We'll recognize Alderwoman Bonnie Peterson.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, Greta, that I really appreciate all that you do at the library. My book club for years have gotten books there, and now 8 out of 10 of us are electronic, and they're getting the books that way. So I'm very impressed that you're keeping up with the times and doing it all on a budget. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to acknowledge the report?
So moved.
We have a motion by Davis, second by Brown, to acknowledge the report. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for the presentation. Item number, now we go on to public comments for items 2 through 57. Can I have a motion to open public comment for 2 through 57? Second. We have a motion by Mason, second by Peterson. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. First go to, on item 26, we'll recognize Douglas Kopman, 413 6th Street. It says here you're available to answer questions. Would you like to address the committee at all, or the council tonight? Just here to answer questions. Okay. Thank you, sir. Item 36, Lynn Kendall from the Chamber of Commerce. Lynn.
Good evening. Lynn Kendall, Vice President with the Chamber of Commerce. I handle all governmental relations and military affairs items. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak a little bit tonight. I wanted to just touch base a little bit with you. We handed out last week at the Legal and Finance a survey that the Chamber did on term lengths, extending the term lengths. We had overwhelming support for the lengthening of term lengths. Extension of term lengths, I apologize. I wanted to let everybody know, too, that the Chamber is hosting a forum on August 22nd, one at noon and one at 5:30 at the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology classroom building. This will be open to the public. We will be doing press releases and getting the word out. We encourage everybody to come. We're really looking for comments, ideas, feedback on this issue. The Chamber's working very hard to gather information and public opinion for the lengthening of municipal term lengths. So we can present a really good idea to you guys of how your community is feeling on this issue. And again, thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker request form is on item 42. We'll recognize Peter Warnicki. Mr. Warnicki.
Yes, thank you. I'm Pete Warnicki. Most of you already know me. I want to stand up and applaud the Compass Accountability Plan, but I'd also making a plea as it's going through your motions for your charter. Currently, the plan has 2 council people sitting on it and 3 at-large citizens, and there's possibly been some rumblings that the balance may want to be changed. I implore you, do not. This is going to be like Fox Garden at Chicken House. This is a plan that I think is a public oversight as well as accountability, and I would prefer that nobody really tampers with the makeup. The public is watching this. They all, from what I've talked to people about it, they all feel this is a great plan. It's a great start, and let's want to just try and keep it as honest as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Warnicki. Next speaker request form is on, well, that's it for that section. We have a motion to close public comment. We have a motion by Roberts and a second by Peterson to close public comment on items 2 through 64. 2 through 50. 2 through 57. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Now we consider consent items 2 through 54. Would any members of the council like to remove any of these items for separate consideration? We'll first go to Alderman Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to pull item number 12, please.
Okay. Item number 12. Charity Doyle.
Item number 42, please.
Okay. Item 42. Mason.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to pull item number 52.
Item 52. Alderman Sasso.
Item 53.
Okay. And Alderman Wright.
34.
All right, so far we have items 12, 34, 42, 52, and 53. Anything else? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve consent with the exception of those items? Motion by Brown, second by Peterson to approve all of items 2 through 54 with the exception of 12, 34, 42, 52, and 53. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Item number 12, Alderman Brown. Would you read it into the agenda for us?
Richie and I have been talking too much. He says I'm coming right over the top of him, so I didn't want to do it here. Number 12 is number PW0-72611-07. Approve change order number 4 to Seco Construction for Main Street Square Site Development, Project PR 2010-1901 for an increase of $21,129, funded by Destination Rapid City. I move approval.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion by Brown, second by Davis. We'll recognize Alderman Richie Nordstrom. Richie?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, if I may ask Dale Tech to clarify number 12 for us on the change order of $21,129. It is explained to us that it was coming out of the funded by Destination Rapid City. However, I did have a couple of citizens come to me and visit about this was an additional increase for the taxpayers. So if I can have Dale Tech kind of explain that a little bit, from his version on it. Thank you.
Mr. Tech.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This change order of $21,000, $21,129 is being funded entirely from the private donation that was added in addition to the $3.5 million in funding that the city had in 2012 funds for the project. The entire $3.5 million has been allocated, so any additional change orders above the $3.5 million is covered by private donation.
Thank you, Mayor. That should take care of it.
Thank you.
I know we had a different opinion expressed by some other folks, so I just wanted to make sure we had a clarification. It was not coming from taxpayer dollars. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for the question. We'll go to Alderwoman Bonnie Peterson. Bonnie?
Thank you, Alderman Nordstrom, for bringing this up. I would also like to emphasize that I'm sure I speak for all of us on the council, that we are watching that spending very closely, because I don't believe this council will allow an extra penny to go toward the construction of city dollars to the construction of Main Street Square. We've made a deal, and we are definitely watching that, and so I just want to assure citizens that we're very cognizant of the fact that this possibly could go over, but we expect Destination Rapid City to live up to their end of the bargain, and that's to come up with the money that, if they need it, that they said they would. Thank you.
We'll recognize Alderman Dave Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A question for Dale Tech. Dale, actually, I'm just going to ask you to restate what you've already said, but it seems like every time we have a change order, someone asks the question again. So what I'm going to say, basically I'm going to put words in your mouth, but I want to make sure that we all are on the same page on this. The 3.5 that we've allocated from 2012 has been spent, or at least been designated to be spent. Anything from this point forward, any change orders, will be coming from the private side, not from the public side, period. Correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
We'll recognize Alderman Ron Sasso. Ron?
I just wanted to reiterate and basically praise Destination Rapid City for their end on this project, that even though there have been increase in costs, they have held their end of the bargain up, and they have not asked for any additional funds. And I don't see that changing, and I think everybody's on the same page. So we're moving ahead. It's good. Thank you.
Any further questions from the council? Seeing none, we do have a motion on the floor to approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item 34, Alderman Mason.
Thank you, Mayor. Motion is to approve employee suggestion program revisions, and I move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion by Mason and a second by Nordstrom. Recognize Jerry Wright. Alderman Wright.
Thank you, sir. Just for clarification, in the evaluation of the suggestion, and I may have missed it in my readings, but who actually selects or who approves and who evaluates? the suggestion.
May I, Mayor?
Alderman Mason, please.
Actually, it's written in the policy currently, and that's going to be our Community Resources Director. And I will scroll down to read this specifically. It's all right. The Community Resource Director is the Employee Suggestion Coordinator. That would be on page 2. It's at the top of the page. So that would be the person to review this.
So who is going to evaluate and document the savings? Is that person going to do that, or are we going to have an accountant, finance manager, a team, or what? Is that determined, or I'm just...
We'll recognize Jeff Barbier, our Community Resources Director.
Thank you, Mayor. The way that actually works is that is done, I work with the finance office on that, and there's a specific formula for finding the savings and then also amortizing the cost of of the implementation of what the suggestion was. So there's a formula in the policy for that. And then also as far as the final decision of whether that the award is given, that decision isn't just made by me. It comes to me, I do the research, and then I take it to a committee of other department heads. So that is made as a group as well.
So it would be up to the department head then to decide ultimately whether there's an award. Is that right?
A committee of department heads, yes.
I'm sorry?
A committee of department heads would make that decision, yes.
And there's direct provision for a suggestion to go directly to you, so a director or division manager can intercede and keep one from coming to you, correct?
Right, exactly.
Okay, I've got my question answered. Thank you.
We'll recognize Alderwoman Bonnie Peterson.
Yes, could I ask Jeff a question, please? Jeff, it says here in the here that the employees would be notified at orientation. Do they have an annual orientation, or is it just like when they first come, so you might not ever hear about it again?
Well, the two times they would hear about it would be when we first sit down with HR and they go through their in-processing, they'll hear about it at that point. And then again, sometime in their first year of employment, they have an employee orientation as a group of new employees taught by Keith Lesperance. And then, so they would hear about those two times right away. And then we will continue to try to post it in employee workspaces, as well as it's one of the things that the new hotline, the new employee hotline will be used for.
Okay, so you feel confident right now most employees are aware of it?
You know, I think some employees are. I think we need to do a better job of communicating and getting the word out. And I've spoken with Alderman Mason, and we've kind of come up with the way we're going to do this to get the word out.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion? We do have a motion to approve item 34. Seeing no further lights, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 42, Alderman Mason.
Thank you, Mayor. Motion requests the mayor to direct the city attorney's office to draft an ordinance that establishes a charter for the Compass Accountability Plan, and I'll make a motion for discussion.
We have a motion by Mason and a second by Davis for approval. Any discussion? And we'll turn the floor over to Charity Doyle.
Okay. Once again, it's time for Rapid City to assess our internal opportunities. There are many of them. Over the past few years, we have been fairly strategic in our proactive in our strategic planning. I would argue, however, that those plans have the potential of falling short. And here's why. In order to reach any goal, you need to know precisely and with great detail where your starting point is, or else the plan simply cannot match the goal. How do I know this is true? Because in any type of planning, the starting point is always worked into the equation. So if that starting point is illusory, or we don't have a real clear picture on it, then the plan will inherently be faulty. What I am proposing today will bridge that gap and allow for more efficient planning as well as cost savings across the board. The Compass Accountability Plan is about being proactive rather than reactive. It goes well beyond financial reporting and assesses program, policy, and procedural performance. In other words, what's working and what's not. Put another way, we're so used to doing what we're used to doing, especially in government, that our blind spot is activated. We don't know what we don't know. And what we don't know, I believe, can limit us. And I think Rapid City and the people of Rapid City deserve better. From a taxpayer perspective, the Compass Plan will materially increase citizens' ability to hold their government accountable. The taxpayers win, but the city wins too. What's more, it is part of this City Council's mission to promote a cost-effective public administration which ensures public trust. I asked the question last Wednesday, I'll ask it again. How many people do you know that implicitly trust City Hall? We can change that, and this plan will do that. It'll allow us to breathe life into our mission statement and truly walk the talk. I really don't believe that there's any time to waste on this one, especially with the economy doing what it's doing and in light of federal dollars drying up. I hope to show you today how we can't afford not to do this. So why would Rapid City need the Compass Accountability Plan? The answer is twofold: to increase the credibility and the effectiveness of city government. And this can be done through a variety of ways, each of which is inherently built into the program. First one is oversight. Is each department or program or policy that we have in place doing what it's supposed to do, serving its purpose? If not, we fix it, simply put. Next is insight. Knowing exactly where we're at will allow us to make the best decisions possible. We can rely on accurate, current, relevant data as opposed to data that is a couple years old. Byproduct of oversight and insight is foresight. Being able to have the ability to identify emerging trends and bring potential challenges to light will help us to not be blindsided. It'll correct things before they have an opportunity to become problems. So those days of having something go through and then fixing it 2 and 3 times have a potential to be over. My two favorites, integrity. You'll notice hindsight's not in that equation, by the way. And transparency. The majority of you ran on platforms of open, honest government. Transparency. This will give us the opportunity to do that. Now, this is not a new concept by any means. Many cities across the country have realized what an unparalleled opportunity they had in moving their city forward. They accepted that responsibility, and here are some of just a few of a broad array of examples that I've been able to dig up. If you want more, I have more. Please ask. City of Portland, Oregon. In a review of a sewer maintenance plan worth $19 million, they found $1.7 million in savings to ratepayers. The way they did that was identifying a discrepancy in an agreement on the books. They took that agreement off and created a new one. It just boiled down to redundancies that were costing ratepayers extra money. So the same level of service was kept, the same relationships were kept with the cost savings benefit. Maricopa County, Arizona has been doing this for a while. Last year alone, they had a recovery and savings of $900,000. That was comprised of improperly assessed parcels and uncollected fees, vehicle fuel usage. Basically, the way they work their fleet is they reimburse city employees for their mileage. They found it was cheaper for them to expand their fleet as opposed to reimbursing for mileage. And they also, part of that $900,000 was the cost savings of not using outside consultants because of the function of the Compass Plan, or that their equivalent was able to do a lot of this consulting for them, if you will. In addition to this $900,000, Maricopa County last year also experienced a cost avoidance of $7.5 million by simply reviewing their existing IT agreements and contracts, looking at, they updated their financial reporting systems. Turns out they were losing a lot of revenue to lost time of people having to wade through antiquated record-keeping systems, as well as reducing their internet usage. So very simple things that help them experience this cost avoidance of $7.5 million. For the last 10 years, fiscal year 01 through 2010, Maricopa County saved $23 million, with an additional $50 million in potential savings from having implemented the audit recommendations ahead of time. So things that were found out, problems were identified, corrective actions were recommended, they implemented them, and boom. I'd like to see what Rapid City could do with that kind of savings. San Jose, California did a fleet assessment, found $633,000 of their usage was just unnecessary. Saved them money that way. Gresham, Oregon found savings in employee overtime in several departments, equivalating to $2.5 million over a 5-year period. Sioux Falls, South Dakota found $44,000 owing to the city in credit card fees. Very simple. Seattle, Washington saved $1 million by simply reducing the ratio of managers to staff in one project alone. Believe you me, this wasn't the only project they stopped at. Greensboro, North Carolina did a review of water and sewer assessments, found $2 million that had not been assessed to property owners. Austin, Texas did a review of on-call pay, resulting in a savings of over $900,000. So why not us? A few months back, this council suggested that the city look into its cell phone plans. City shopped around and saved $60,000 over the course of a year. I think that one example alone could nearly have paid for one staff for this plan. So I have a hard time believing that cell phone plans are the only area where we can improve. I think the opportunities are there. We just need to look. What I want you to understand about Compass is that it'll provide timely and reliable information that we can all understand. It will get us all talking the same language. Especially with having an entirely new council, I think the benefits are self-explanatory. It will also be money well spent to provide the continuity and the consistency that governments typically lack and that, we've lacked in the past. In addition to what it can do for us to allow us to get down to real city business and quit wading through the minutia, it'll give the public faith in the city's ability to do what the city's supposed to do. Maximize the efficiency and effectiveness of our operations, provide timely and reliable data, exercise full compliance with all regulations and contracts, reduce waste, eliminate risk, prevent fraud, and mitigate crises, ensure that the allocation of funds are as efficient and economical as possible, evaluate if a program or a policy or procedure has achieved its objectives, assess a program's decisions or outcomes, both intended and unintended. Examine the extent to which we have minimized our use of inputs consistent with the quality needs of the program while maintaining that costs are controlled. Assess program or policy alternatives and weigh the advantages and disadvantages of various legislative proposals. Now, risk assessment is pretty self-explanatory, but in government, risks can go beyond normal financial and operational risks and can include political and societal risks as well. And I think it's worth taking a look at. And if you think that even only half of these are worthwhile, then I believe this program will be more than worth the effort. Now, it's very simple to implement. What we're proposing tonight is to pass an ordinance which establishes the charter. The charter will lay out the framework for the Compass Committee. And then once the committee is in place, we hire whomever we need. Now, I will make a note on hiring internally versus externally. There are organizations and firms that we can hire to do this for us. No question about it, and I'm sure they'd be glad to take the money. However, hiring internally will save us about 54% per hour. So it is much more cost-effective to do it this way. After talking with staff, it is believed that we can do this with the addition of only 2 FTEs, and it sounds like the creative juices are flowing and finding a way to do that. Now let's talk a little bit more about the Compass Committee. in the research that I've done, it's favored to have a ratio of citizens at large to city council people where the citizens outnumber the council people, because we want this to truly be the people's accountability program. So what my suggestion would be 2 city council people and 3 citizens at large. Obviously, we can discuss that. But what I want to stress is it's the addition of people who are experienced and knowledgeable in this field that will be able to steer us. It's a navigation system. We want to make sure that we have people at the helm who know where we need to go. I think it's a fair thing to say and a fair thing to ask for. Now, the role of this committee will be to provide that independent oversight of the work and findings, to assess the resource needs of the program to make sure that they can do what they want to do, as well as mediate the assessor's relationship with the city. So again, it's building in that level of the checks and balances, the oversight, and the independence that I think is going to be beneficial in any type of government. There are a lot of details online on your links if you need more, and if there's anything you think that you would like to see that I have not provided, let me know and I'll be glad to get it to you. Once the system is in place, very simple. Whatever the steering committee decides is going to be looked at first, gets assessed. Any discrepancies, our findings are bubbled up to the surface and reported to the committee as well as the city council. Recommendations are forwarded to department heads, and the department heads, who know their department better than anybody else, have a chance to agree or disagree. Should they concur with the findings, they will provide an implementation plan and a timetable. Should they disagree with the findings, they can provide a counter argument, and the issue simply gets put back through the process until we find a workable resolution. So it's nothing mandated, it's not a dictatorship, it's something that will increase the effectiveness across the board of every city department, every procedure, everything that we're doing to make sure that we are experiencing those ever-increasing efficiencies, ever-increasing cost savings that the taxpayers demand. I guess that's pretty much it. We have an opportunity here to make sure that business as usual in Rapid City is over. A lot of us ran on that. We'd like to see it. It's time for opportunity. Now, what I'd like to stress is that Compass is more than an audit plan. It's a far-reaching navigation system to foster ever-increasing efficiencies. With the economic struggles that we're all facing, skyrocketing material and energy costs, and federal dollars drying up, I believe it's important that we make sure we've done everything in our power to maximize our efficiencies and eliminate waste. Compass will identify those opportunities for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Doyle, for the excellent presentation. Do we have any council member comments or questions? We'll recognize Alderman Jerry Wright.
Charity, thank you. I want to support this. I hope we can evolve it. And I just want to comment, and I visited with some of my colleagues, and I said I didn't say sometimes because I don't want to sound like I still work for the city, per se. But I can share with you that for 23 years I ran a division that the budget was approximately $8 million, 46 employees, and millions of dollars worth of equipment. In reality, with very little oversight. And I'm not talking about any things that are in the paper right now. I'm talking about just operation of the business. And the city just didn't have the resources to back up their field managers or even the department heads. So I think it's a great idea. Thinking of the departments out there that can just use that outsider to come in. I know in my days I would meet with businessmen in the community and I'd say, I'd love to have you come out and tell me what I'm doing wrong. And they usually didn't take me up on it because I think they were too busy. But I think it's always good to have that audit. And I kind of think of this as in some ways like the IG walking in and inspecting your operation. And I think it could be a wonderful way, not just to help managers to see maybe things that they're too close to, or just help to get things done. And our more common time of catching or getting better was when we were able to do a rate study, or we had a project, we had consultants, and we had outside sources to help us, but it's rare. I do believe 2 people are not enough. I think you need to look at, when you get into that, just a little thought, that I think we need to look at, in the vastness of this city, which is very complex and very unique and very good, and there's a lot of very good management and very good people out there, the demand will be high. And I think it would be easy to get lost in some details somewhere else. And I can think of when we hired an environmental engineer to help us, and they vaporized into Public Works, and we never saw them. There's just such an excessive amount of work. So I hope that we protect and make sure that this does become that guidance to the divisions and departments, and to help them, not to hurt them, not to harass them, to get them better. And I support you.
I recognize Jordan Mason. Alderman Mason.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll keep my comments short, but this is something that I fully support. It's something that obviously the city needs. Looking in our past, we've spent a considerable amount of time, and I appreciate her comments on referencing the cell phone plan. And looking at the amount of time in the past that we spent on looking at that and looking at other areas that we were constantly looking at, I welcome this. And long and short of it is bravo. Bravo to Alderwoman Charity Doyle. Thank you.
We'll recognize Alderman Sasso. Ron Sasso.
Yes, I just wanted to say that it's a wonderful, wonderful job on the presentation. I really appreciate Jerry's comments, Alderman Wright's comments, because one of the things that, as a city, on the one hand, we do things. I believe all our city staff do a great job in looking at how we can save money at the same time when you have a lot of work, looking at ways to get help to be able to save and see things from an outside perspective is so important. But yes, I applaud this. And actually, do we have a motion on the floor on this?
We do.
Okay.
The motion is to approve, and then in just a moment, I think there'll be discussion on appointing a committee to assist writing the ordinance. Anything further? Ron, anything further? Okay, we'll recognize Gary Brown. Alderman Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think anybody can say and find anything we don't like in this. This really sounds like a new, exciting plan on that. The one thing I would like to reemphasize, it was brought out at the Legal Finance Committee meeting, is what Charity said at the very end. This is not necessarily an audit. It's not a gotcha. It's to help navigate through our financial and find what's good and what's working. It's not a gotcha. It's to help find new ways and to save money. So I say, let's go forward.
Alderman Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, too, want to applaud Charity. What a gutsy move to bring it up this early in her career, and what a great plan. The whole concept of Compass, as Gary just pointed out, it isn't a gotcha plan, but rather a navigator, as is a compass. And I think that's let's talk just a tad about the title that she's chosen. A compass can give us the direction that we're headed. It can tell us where we've been. It can help us find the whole horizon. It can pinpoint down to a single degree. In conjunction with other tools, it can help us measure distance. It can help us find not only where we are, but where we're headed. Think about that in the big picture of the city. It isn't just about finding one thing right or wrong. It's about looking at the entire picture, looking at the entire horizon. And yet, if we have an employee or a citizen that brings a particular item to us that says, I have a real concern right here on this single degree of the compass point, those auditors can go and pinpoint and find, are we in the right direction? What a perfectly titled and perfectly directed program at a time that we need it. So it reminds me of an old saying that I've used many times as I've taught new salespeople through the years, the difference between professionals and amateurs. The first difference is that amateurs don't keep score. Professionals, you normally see a scoreboard where they play. This is a scoreboard. We're going to know what the score is at any given time. There's another slight difference about professionals. They play for money. We're not amateurs. This is a big business that we run here. And watching the money is the people's business. We are professionals, and this is an opportunity to act like it. Congratulations.
Alderman Roberts.
I just want to commend Charity on this, too. I'm thankful. I had a chance to talk to her about it a little last week. One of the most intelligent women I've ever met in my life. And I think she's been refreshing to the council in Rapid City. I love the thought of the accountability. I mean, it's something that we've needed in Rapid and on the council and in the city for a long time. I just want to thank you, Charity.
Alderman Wright.
Little history lesson, I think, in a success story that should give you encouragement to do this. And that is that in 1989, I suggested we go to automated garbage. It took 14 years to get it in. However, we found in the process, and it was predicted by manufacturers, we found 5% of the accounts that were not on the books for various reasons, which amounted to about $120,000 a year, I think, of lost revenue. We saw our workman's comp go from $29,000 down to $800, and we saw 7 employees relocated into another division or another department, a savings of in excess of $307,000 per year. It's possible, practical, and I applaud you. So I'm all for it. Thank you.
And we'll go to Bonnie Peterson.
Yes, thanks. The ordinance, we're voting here on the ordinance to establish a charter or for the attorneys to work on that. Do we need a motion to form a committee to assist with that? Or
Joel, we'll go to our Assistant City Attorney, Joel Landine. Joel, do you recommend an amendment or that we vote on this and then get a motion on the floor regarding the appointment of the committee to assist with writing the charter?
Thank you, Mayor. I think really you could do it either way. If I know the discussion this morning on agenda review is to look at a committee to give more direction into what and help craft the ordinance. So I think you could either do an amendment whereby you appoint a committee to direct that. And in fact, that's probably a better if that's where the council wants to go. Otherwise, we would, if the motion passed, we could just direct and draft an ordinance. However, we wouldn't have a lot of guidance, and then a lot of that work would probably be done later at committee.
okay, so
I could just mention
okay.
my suggestion here. I'll just read this. This is a memo the council has. Dave Davis and I recommend a motion to place first reading for the August 31 Legal and Finance Committee and appoint the following people to the committee to help write the charter ordinance for the program. Charity Doyle, Chairwoman, Dave Davis from the City Council, Tammy Crum from Human Resources, Joel Landine from the City Attorney's Office, and Pauline Sumption from Finance. In addition, Jason Green, Jeff Barbier, Bonnie Peterson, Mary Floto, and Sam Quaker will have involvement in the process. The meetings can be held probably in the caucus room. We're trying to keep the committee small so there are less schedules to juggle. I'd like to read the tasks that the committee will likely be assigned. First is to write the ordinance. We recommend a 5-member standing committee be appointed after the program has commenced. There's been discussion of whether it would be 3 city council members and 2 committee members, or 3 community members and 2 city council members. There are pluses and negatives to doing it both ways. I think it's important to recognize that under our the current form of government we have, that officers of the city are appointed or to these committees are typically are appointed by the mayor. And so I had actually suggested that we do 3 city council members, because then the council members would be, that's the unit of government closest to the people, and the 3 city council members could then be appointed by the council rather than coming from the mayor's office. So Mr. Wernicke, I think you brought up a good suggestion, but I wanted you to know that that's why I had thought that we might want to actually do 3 city council members, because I don't think we want a situation where we have the mayor, whoever the mayor is, appointing both auditors and a majority of the committee. And so that's where I was going with that, but that can all be discussed by the committee. The second thing is the job descriptions and reporting relationships. We're suggesting that both positions, or however many positions we have for the Compass, be confirmed by the City Council to ensure good checks and balances going forward. CPA preferred, but a combination of education and experience should be required, including investigations, auditing, etc. And the cost center, council leadership, and I believe it should probably be in the mayor-council cost center so that it stays separate and doesn't get absorbed into another department over time. There is a resolution coming forward at one of the next legal and finance meetings to reduce 3.5 FTE positions that are currently open. We're going to eliminate those open positions, and some or all of those positions would be available for this program. So I would recommend, if you're in concurrence, that you proceed with appointing the 5-member charter drafting committee that Alderman Davis and I worked on today. We have a motion. We have a motion by Brown and a second by Wright to amend the motion on the floor to include the appointment of these 5 people to assist in writing the charter ordinance. Okay. Any further discussion? Bonnie Peterson.
Yes, seems like I'm about the only one that hasn't thanked Charity for bringing this forward. So it's very good. It's going to help us work smart and help us really set our priorities. And hopefully the new formed committee will choose to find some good examples and maybe model their the charter recommendations or the establishment from those that have shown success. So anyway, thank you very much.
Any further discussion? Everyone understands or actually we're voting on the amendment first, and then we'll vote on the amended motion. So the motion right now is to approve the amendment to add the to appoint the 5-member committee. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We now vote on the amended motion. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Charity Doyle. Item 52, Alderman Mason.
Item 52 is to request the mayor to direct the city attorney's office to prepare a document retention policy. And I make a motion for discussion.
We have a motion for approval for the sake of discussion. Seconded, and that was a motion by Mason and a second by Brown. And we'll recognize Alderman Jordan Mason.
Thank you, Mayor. There's obviously been some discussion about some of the past activity from the prior administration and dealing with how we were keeping documents, and there's been a number of questions raised. And given the circumstances, there's obviously been some positive direction that's come out of this, I think, with the policies that we're offering tonight. But I still do have one simple question that I would like to ask our city attorney, if I may.
Please.
Thank you. Given the nature of the questions that have been raised on this issue in moving forward these policies, but in particular looking at past administrative activity, will the state's attorney have an opportunity to review some of the documents?
We'll recognize our City Attorney, Jason Green.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've provided a lengthy memo to the council on this issue, and it's my opinion there's no need to send this to the state's attorney because there's nothing that gets remotely close to a crime here. If you want to send it to the state's attorney, you certainly can. But frankly, in my opinion, it's a waste of time.
Thank you. Appreciate the opinion and feedback. And that does help answer some of the questions that have been raised. Overall, just to reemphasize, I do think that in looking to the past and now looking to the future, I see a lot of positive things that are coming out of this. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion? I guess I feel compelled to say something. I think. Okay. It appears that we may have a disconnect within the city attorney's office. It was my understanding in talking to another one of the attorneys today that this was going to be referred. And so I guess I would like to, I think we can circle up with Alderman Mason and provide him further information, but it was my understanding that that it was going to be referred. So I think we do have a bit of a disconnect, but Alderman Mason will clear that up with you at a later time. Bonnie Peterson.
Thank you. I hate to see that something that just needs clarification is looks like it's been trying to be turned into something political, and we're working on this to clarify the rules of the game so that there wouldn't be any future problems, so that everybody knows what the rules are. And I hate to see that people are trying to stir up trouble, potential trouble where there is none. So I just want to make that comment. Thank you.
Alderman Mason.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to clarify, because I do feel like I have a bit of a right to defend my statement here, but to reread the question that I originally asked was, given the nature of the questions that have been raised on this issue, will the state's attorney have an opportunity to review the documents? That is word for word what I asked. Any relation to anything implying a crime that was mentioned from our city attorney, I was never asking about that. I specifically also, in preface to that, made reference to the policy. Now, the rules of the game, I just want to clarify, we have asked in looking at new policies and new procedures to consult with the state's attorney on numerous occasions, and that's all I'm asking. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion? Just for the record, this will be turned over to the state's attorney for review, and I think that that is the right thing to do and have it looked into independently. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Item number 53, Alderman Mason.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 53 is to approve the amendment to the technology resource usage policy with the inclusion of the verbiage city employees and elected employees. And I move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion by Mason and a second by Peterson, and we'll recognize Alderman Sasso.
I know as the discussion on item 52 and 53, there are a lot of similarities between the two items, and one of the things that looking at the technology resource usage policy, that's something that as elected officials, very important that we are not above the law, and we should be treated the same as everyone else, and I think that inclusion is very good to make that very clear. You know, I have to say, given you know, the memos that are attached to item number 53, definitely some concern just from the standpoint of documents that hard drives being formatted, and whether or not, when you look at the city currently dealing with a trial I don't know if anything could have come out of that or would have. I know that information doesn't exist anymore. And it's something that ideally with that policy moving forward, that we have something that is very clear for future administrations, that documents stay, that we do not destroy. And if you look at the manual from South Dakota, page 4 indicates municipal calendars, and that should be retained. This is something I have to say I would have expected maybe in Chicago, but I think it's good that we are fixing this and moving forward. So, thank you.
Any further discussion? I recognize Bonnie Peterson. Bonnie?
Thank you. I was wondering if Russ is here by chance. Oh, there you are. I wanted to ask him a question.
We'll recognize Russ Teensvold from IT.
Hi, Russ. I assume when the city council turns their computers back into the city, what happens to them? You know, we've moved on and we're no longer in the city council.
Sure. I guess the first thing I would say is we do not necessarily have a cut and dried, clear, step-by-step process that's the same for every computer. So, for example, it would depend on where that computer was going next. If that computer were going to be issued to another council member, we at some level might remove data from that hard drive. It may not be everything that's on that computer. It may just be the parts that were specific to that user. So it's a case-by-case basis.
So are you saying that like any Word documents or anything that I might generate on my computer would just remain on there so that other people could look at them?
No, those kinds of things are always removed, but sometimes we might actually uninstall the operating system and completely reload the operating system from scratch, which is a different kind of a data overwrite than just removing personal documents. It just depends on the situation.
Okay. Are the city council computers, their documents that they've made, have put on their computer, are those saved into the system so that later someone else could look at them?
Typically, they are not, and that's because those computers are ordinarily not connected to our network in any way. So the only way to perform a standard backup for those is if the user chooses to do that.
Okay, so you're saying the user would not back it up into the city, they would just could back it up into their own, onto a flash drive or something to take it with them?
That's correct. The only exception to that is email. So city email is backed up on a regular basis because that data does reside on our server.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I think that's all the questions I have for you. I just wanted to say, because we're looking here at city employees and elected employees and backing up things, certain things have to be backed up, and for certain people, I think that when we're looking at these things too, that we need to explore once, if we have information, who's allowed to see it in the future. And so anyway, it's a real, very gray area, and I think communities around the country are still working to define these things, and I certainly don't hold any of us to be held to a lower standard than any other employee. But I just wanted to point out that electronic data that's on my computer, when I'm using it, that it doesn't get backed up necessarily, and that also that I would be concerned that once I do turn it over to you, that if, just say I was getting email and back and forth or made documents, that other people would not be able to look at it. So that would be, anyway, I'm just trying to, I think, point out that there are a lot of gray areas and a lot of trust that we have to have with each other. And so I appreciate did you want to say?
Yeah, the only thing I would want to add is we do have policy in that existing technology resource usage policy that you're referring to tonight that discusses what happens with email. So email specifically can only be viewed by certain people with certain permissions, and it's all logged, et cetera. So it's not a free flow of information in any regard, and we do have internal controls within the IT department to ensure that data that's on a computer that's returned back to us, that information does not flow anyplace else, whether there's a specific policy in place or not. I just wanted to reassure you that there's no issues in that regard.
We'll recognize Alderman John Roberts.
Can I ask you a question, too? Oh, excuse me.
Certainly.
Now, I understand that it's probably pretty common to wipe computers, except for probably the mayor. They probably don't do that too often, do they?
Mayor, if I may. Again, wiping computers is a very general term. It
Okay.
can mean anything from doing a full write where you're overwriting everything on that hard drive with ones and zeros, which means it's absolutely non-recoverable, anything from that data drive.
That's what I mean. That's what they did here, correct?
We did a partial wipe of the data in that way on the former mayor's hard drive, correct. That kind of a hard drive wipe, for lack of a better term, is not that uncommon. It's much more common when we are replacing a server hard drive or when we have a user who has, for example, a virus on their computer that we can't seem to get rid of. We might do something fairly severe like that. But again, data wipes in one form or another happen all of the time. Does that help?
A lot of people, I think, are kind of concerned because, this could have been public knowledge. This could have been things that, are important to the people of Rapid City. There's just kind of an issue some people have with the way this was done. So, thank you, though. I appreciate it.
May I add a comment? In all fairness, we also don't know what was on that hard drive. When wiping data from a hard drive, we don't go through and review what that data is. We just go through the process. So it may have been virtually nothing, or it may have been other data. We really have no idea, and honestly, it's just our job to do what we're directed to do.
I agree with that. I agree that it was your job that you did it. You did it. Somebody's, told you to do it. Thank you.
Alderman Jerry Wright. Jerry?
Thank you, sir. I think we're off to a good start as a council and the new mayor, and I am concerned that this might become kind of a political hunt, and I don't want to see that. If it happens, it happens. But a question, I think we need to look forward and move forward. The question I have of terminology says, if a document in red is existing in the document, it's just highlighted in red to emphasize it, or is this new insertion?
The text that's in red is new text that we are proposing be added. And in reviewing the document, regardless of this other discussion, it occurred to us that we were remiss in not having something in the original document that discussed deleting data. It was merely an oversight from the original document. So the text in red is what we're suggesting. The additional comment that you see in the agenda title to add elected officials to that was an afterthought for us. After we had submitted the text in red for the agenda, it occurred to the IT staff that perhaps it should have read city employees and elected officials. So we just offered that as a suggestion.
Well, this says no city employee and so forth, goes on, shall delete production data. Production data is defined as useful to the business of the city of Rapid City. I am assuming that within our own system, with our bookkeeping and so forth, that I assume that we have all contracts, transactions, agreements, and other legal documents that reflect the business of the city of Rapid City, do we not?
I'm sure
so we
we
haven't eliminated that information, have we? by doing this. And I'm just saying, I'm trying to move forward instead of make this into a bloodbath. Thank you.
Alderman Mason.
Thank you, Mayor. I have some simple questions just for clarification point to ask our city attorney, if I may. Joel, just for clarification, but can digital documents related to public business be defined as public records?
Joel.
It would really depend on what the document was. There's a whole new chapter on what's public records. I will say that many of the electronic records are specifically excluded, such as emails and things like that, that would not be considered public records.
Thank you. And so just to clarify, so you're saying that there are some that can, but there are some that are not, correct?
Yes, there are some documents that are prepared, like I have contracts and things on my computer that I've drafted that then are approved, but that record is then reproduced in the minutes of the meetings and whatnot. I mean, if you think about it as a staff member, I delete things all the time. I'll work on something, it'll get approved, and I don't need it anymore, and I'll delete it. It's hard to decide. You have certain laws that require certain records to be kept. Those are kept by the finance office or whoever else is designated to keep those records. And then we all as employees have records on our computers that are related to city business, may or may not be a public record. Again, it would ultimately depend on what the record was.
Right. Given that information, additionally, I guess I'm wondering, is there anything that the state law says concerning the management of public records then?
Generally, to be honest, I'm not comfortable answering that right now. I'd want to look at it longer. I know that City Attorney Jason Green, that you had many questions, and he provided a pretty lengthy response, and some of this may cover what he has already covered. Sure. I would want to take a look at that memo again and also look at the law myself prior to answering it.
Thank you. Overall, I'm happy, as I've said before, to reiterate that we are looking forward with a policy to create something that will preserve public documents and make sure that those are preserved, and that there is a management policy and some strict guidelines here that are going to be laid out. But I did just want a little bit of clarification on for myself and hopefully also for others. Thank you.
Alderman Sasso.
Yeah, I think one of the things that just looking at how, moving forward, and I think back, looking at what's public record, what's backed up on the server, understanding that email, which the majority of communication is email nowadays, that being backed up, that's good. At the same time, I think back when I took over as Program Director of Community Transitions, and there were a handful of documents on that computer, and I was grateful for those. Basically, just a lot of it communication emails, communication letters. Those, and I know that's a different time period, but at the same time, there may have been some things that also could have been valuable to a mayor coming in. But also looking, I think Ron Weifenbach made the comment the other day that, starting with a clean slate is another way of looking at it. But I think moving forward, perhaps, if we're looking how many elected officials we have and how many computers that, if there is something, like, for instance, any lawsuits that are out there, how much, Russ, actually, how much effort would it take to back up each computer and store the documents that are on there on a disk for 3 years or however, just until it's safe to be destroyed? Is that something that's reasonable before formatting?
Without actually looking at the specific numbers, we've looked at some generalizations, and it's potentially a $10,000 to $40,000 project to purchase the software that's required to go on each of 700-plus computers here at the city, actually probably closer to 1,000. And in addition, you'll have a specific problem with computers like what the city council uses. That computer needs to be connected to our network in order for it to draw a backup. If a backup is to be done every night, are you going to require council members to bring their laptop in and leave it here every night or once a week overnight? Or there's a lot of logistics that would have to be dealt with, in addition to the cost for the software for each computer to be backed up into our system. And then the last point is data takes storage space, and storage space of the quality that we use in a professional system like this is extremely expensive. So you're adding additional cost on top of that. Technically, it can all be done, but there are logistics involved in it, and there is cost.
And I guess my question, most of the computers in the city, are they on the server being backed up typically?
Yes, they're on the server. No, they're not being backed up.
Okay, so and actually that could be a different problem. So right now, like for instance, Public Works, anything that's being worked on isn't necessarily being backed up?
And I apologize, I don't mean to belittle the topic, but for example, many departments have shared drives that reside on our server, and they'll direct their staff to put all important documents on a shared drive, which is backed up every night. If those employees have some documents that are stored on their local hard drive on their computer, they will not be backed up. If they're stored on a shared location for that department, which many departments do, then they're backed up.
Okay, yeah, that's just because our agency has a network that backs up documents periodically, but and here I was looking at perhaps five elected officials per year, and every couple of years a mayor backing that up, so it's a little wider than I thought. So, but thank you.
Bonnie Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to ask Russ another question, if that's okay. Thanks. Russ, so when a city employee, then you said they're supposed to back up on the server important documents. And so if they forget to, then it resides on their own computer? Is that,
correct?
Do I have that right? So then, say an employee leaves, they get a job across country and they leave. What happens to their computer?
It all depends. Every case is different. In many cases, the department that person worked in will retain that computer intact until they get a replacement person in that position. Then they will transfer the pertinent documents from one computer to the other.
So how do you determine pertinent documents?
That's up to the department. Just bear in mind that we're simply the technology people, so we aren't reviewing documents. We have no idea what's relevant and what's not. So it's typically something more along the lines of take all the information that was on this employee's computer and make it available for this employee. Does that make sense?
Okay, so basically then when somebody leaves, all the information is still left on their computer.
That's often the case, or it resides in a shared drive on the server, depending on how that department deals with their specific data.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Russ, am I correct that this should read city employees and elected officials, not elected employees? City employees and elected officials?
Our suggestion was city employees and elected officials, but that's up to this board.
Okay. Motion maker's intent. Who's the motion maker on this? Alderman Mason, that your intent is city employees and elected officials. Okay. Any further discussion on this motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. We're now on to items 55 through 57, continued consent. Anyone like to remove any of these three items? If not, do we have a motion to continue the...
So moved.
Okay. Motion by Davis, second by Brown, to continue items 55 through 57 per the recommendation on the agenda. All in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries. We now continue on with public comment for items 58 through 64. Do we have a motion to open public comment? Motion by Brown, second by Mason, to open public comment on items 58 to 64. All in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries. See if we have any public comment. We do not. We have a motion to close public comment on 58. Okay, we have a motion by Davis and a second by Brown to close public comment on items 58 through 64. Sorry, Ron, it was a tie, so I had to give it to somebody. So, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Item 58, Alderman Mason.
Item 58, first reading ordinance number 5732, an ordinance to change the qualifications for membership on the Rapid City Regional Airport Board by amending section 2.72.020 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, and I move for approval.
Motion by Mason, second by Doyle. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries. Item 59, Alderman Mason.
59, second reading ordinance number 5729, an ordinance to make the executive assistant / program coordinator within the mayor's office an officer of the city by adding section 2.12.070 of to the Rapid City Municipal Code, and I move for approval.
We have a motion by Mason and a second by Davis. Any discussion? If I could just interject a moment, I just wanted to announce to the council that we, and I think you already know this, but we received 139 applications for this position. Interviews will be held over the next couple of weeks, and I hope to have an appointment to you within the next month. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Item 60.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 60, second reading ordinance number 5730, an ordinance to increase the amount to purchase that department directors are authorized to make on behalf of the city of Rapid City by amending section 3.04.030 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, and I move for approval.
We have a motion by Mason and a second by Peterson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Bids. Pauline Sumption, our finance officer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First item under the bids is a 6-inch portable diesel trash pump for water reclamation. This was opened on July 26, 2011. We did receive 2 bids on this project. The recommendation is to award the total bid in the amount of $29,978 to Grimm's Pump, an industrial supply.
Motion by Peterson, second by Brown. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Item 62.
62 is for the Sterling Street Sanitary Sewer Extension Project. We received 2 bids on this as well. However, the bids came in higher than expected, and so the recommendation is to reject all bids and to allow Public Works to re-advertise for bids at a later date.
Motion by Brown, second by Nordstrom. And we'll recognize Jerry Wright. Alderman Wright.
Dale, if may I ask, explain why there's 4 times the estimate.
Actually, it's not 4 times the estimate. It was 4 times the original advertising authority.
Yeah, that's right.
The engineer's estimate for this project was $167,000. The total bid came in at about $196,000, which is about 18% over engineer's estimate. Since this is an assessed project, this increase over the engineer's estimate would be passed directly on to the people paying the assessment. We believe that if we wait to a more favorable time of the year to rebid this project, we will get better prices, more bids, thereby reducing the amount that the citizens would have to pay to hook up to this sewer.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Item 63.
Item 63 is the Rapid City Water Reclamation Facility for the Chlorination Building re-roof project. This bid was actually awarded previously. We are just requesting a change in the funding source.
Motion by Mason, second by Roberts. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 64, Vision 2012 update.
Thank you, Mayor. There are no updates to report tonight. As of the last report given, I believe on July 5th, no additions to the 2012 funding have occurred, so no report.
Do we have a motion to acknowledge the no report? Motion by Roberts and a second by Peterson to acknowledge the non-report. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Item 64A, Pauline.
64A is, I just want to report to the council, I know you guys should have received an email last week from my office that the mayor has vetoed the action taken at the July 18th council meeting regarding the solid waste rate study. The reason being, there were 5 of you that had additional questions on this, and no one had asked for reconsideration in the future of this motion when the motion was passed. So this was the only option left to bring it back on the table. Now, Mr. Tech does have some ideas on how to proceed from here with the veto being placed forward. I would ask after his presentation that you would either have a motion to acknowledge the veto or to override the veto, whichever is your wishes. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Tech.
Thank you, Mayor. My recommendation is to take this contract to HDR Incorporated for the solid waste rate study to the Solid Waste Committee, which is going to be meeting on August 18th, and have them review the contract. In addition to that, the consultant has been notified and have offered their services to come to the Solid Waste Committee meeting to answer any questions about the process for the solid waste study. I guess my recommendation would be to refer this item to the Solid Waste Committee for their recommendation back to the City Council.
Do we have a motion or any discussion? I recognize Bonnie Peterson.
I'm sorry. I would support that about taking it to the Solid Waste Committee. You said that's on August 18th? And I would also say that I am thankful, Mayor Quaker, that you did veto this because you knew that there were some concerns from councilmen. So I thank you for doing that so that we can stop and reconsider what we really want to do. So thank you.
Recognize Alderman Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. If I'm correct, I was one of the council members appointed to that committee. So, if there's any questions or concerns, I'd surely take those into consideration to take to that committee as well. So, any input, gratefully accepted. Thank you.
Alderman Mason.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I just want to applaud the mayor in his actions here, because myself and maybe like others, I don't necessarily ask for perfection, but I do ask for people that when there is an issue, that there is an effort put forward to rectify that. And I know that it took a lot of guts to step forward and do this, and I just wanted to applaud you. I did have a question for our Public Works Director. But it's my understanding that if this goes through the Solid Waste Committee, that there would be another opportunity for the council to review that. Is that correct?
Your contract.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Thank you. I would be comfortable with that.
Thank you, Alderman Mason. We do not have a motion on the floor. We recognize Dave Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for City Attorney. Do we need one motion or two? The motion being, in one motion, could we accept the veto or acknowledge the veto and send it to the solid waste to have them study it, or do we need to have a motion to acknowledge the veto and another motion to have the solid waste bring back their recommendation. Jason?
Jason Green.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would recommend that you acknowledge the veto on this and then refer the matter to the Solid Waste Committee. Two motions. If you do override, or if you attempt to reconsider the item and then refer it, when it comes back, it's going to require the supermajority to get approved. I think what the intention here is to say, we don't like this contract, we'd like to see something a little different. So I think you accomplish that by simply acknowledging the mayor's veto, asking the committee to take another look at it.
My motion would be to acknowledge the mayor's veto.
We have a motion by Davis and a second by Peterson to acknowledge the veto. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
I have a motion to refer this to the Solid Waste Committee for reconsideration so they can return a more favorable recommendation to us.
We have a motion by Davis and a second by Doyle to refer to the Solid Waste Committee. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Item 64B, Pauline.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have also placed at the dais for each of you and handed out to the media the proposed schedule for the August 4th and August 8th budget meetings. You will see the very first thing is there will be a training session on the budgeting process by Colleen Schmidt and the Finance Office. That is something new. I think it's something that will be worthwhile with a young council that we have. So hopefully that will work. I do have some emails out to some people. This may be tweaked a little bit, but at this time, this is what I have for you, and I would just ask that you acknowledge that report.
Doyle and a second by Roberts to acknowledge, and we'll recognize Dave Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is something new, and not only is it new just for those members, those of us on the council, but I want to extend that invitation to the media that 4 o'clock meeting start is an invitation for you to be there to learn the same things that we might. Municipal Budget 101 will be running next Thursday at 4 o'clock. So we hope that the media will join us and learn a little bit as well. And the public, for that matter. It is a public meeting, so it might be educational for everyone. We will go through a lot of the things that are unique to a muni budget, and there will even be a tutorial on the software that we use, the spreadsheet we use, so give you a little idea of how we move around in that budget. Thank you.
Pauline, we'll turn this back over to you, and if you could just reiterate the dates and the places and the times.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That is actually what I wanted to point out. Thursday, August 4th is actually going to be at the Doll. When we scheduled the date, we failed to remember that the school board meets in this room on Thursdays, so it will be at the Doll beginning at 4 o'clock and ending approximately at 8:30. Mr. Davis has been tasked as the taskmaster for these meetings. The second meeting will be Monday, August 8th, again beginning at 4 o'clock, and tentative end time is 8:15. More than likely, we will have to have yes, this one is here on next Monday. It is in the council chambers, and more than likely, we will need a third meeting. And so, at some point, the finance office is going to do a presentation on performance-based budgeting, which is being proposed for next year. We're excited to get that presentation to you, so we don't want to forget about that when we schedule additional meetings.
Any further discussion? Alderman Sasso.
So now the first one is Budgeting 101, and then does it go up progressively to graduate level? And
I think once we get to performance-based budgeting, it'll be a whole different spectrum for you. So that's why we're keeping it to the end. We don't want to get the two different ways confused
Thanks.
for you.
Any further discussion? The motion is to acknowledge. I think we have another one. That works. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we open public comment on public hearing items 65 through 72, and we do have several speaker request forms. Do we have a motion to open the public hearing comment time for items 65 through 72? We have a motion by Peterson, second by Mason, to open public hearing comment period. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. We'll go to item 70. Recognize Ron Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. I received a notice by certified mail on July 22, 2011, this being the time and place to raise any objections to the assessments by owners liable to be assessed for the business improvement district, and I'm here to object. I did receive a notice that my assessment on our property at 832 St. Joseph was $319. That doesn't seem like a lot of money particularly, but when you add it to all of the things that are happening these days to burden property ownership, I think it's just another concern that I have. The notice talks about property which we own abutting the project, and the project, as I understand it, is the Main Street Square. And I will say that I was not an active opponent of Main Street Square, and I'm certainly sensitive to the motives of the people who supported that and what they intended to do. However, the ordinance and the notice indicates that it's intended to improve businesses located within the area of the assessment. But I'd like to point out that the ordinance actually assesses the real estate property, not the businesses. And for example, in our building, we have term leases. And so I cannot pass on the assessment to the tenants. We also have one tenant who is domiciled in Arizona, rents space in our building, but does not do any business in the city of Rapid City. So I don't think it would be fair to assess that tenant, even if I could, but I can't, again, because there's a term lease in any event. The point, I think, is that my concern is that really what we're talking about is a public park. And I don't know of any community that I've ever lived in which has had an assessment for a public park to certain businesses within a restricted area of the park, because I really do believe it's a good thing for downtown, but I really believe that it's intended to serve the public. And the public is invited, and the public, not only within our city, but our visitors from outside the city, I'm sure will visit and enjoy it. So my point is that I really think the assessment should be more broadly based than just on the real estate within the district. And I would say that I really personally feel there's some constitutional arguments that could be made, but more than that, I think it's a fairness issue, and I really do believe that the city should reconsider the base of support for that park. So for what it's worth, we do oppose the role. God bless you. I know your job is not an easy one, but I did want to appear and make that statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. We'll recognize Twyla Lutke on item 71.
My name is Twyla Lutke, and I live at 633 Indiana Street. It's interesting to see a lot of new faces. I've been here many times on this issue, but at least I have some new faces to talk to. Please do not permit another casino to be built on Indiana Street. This proposed casino would be built within 100 feet of an existing casino with just an alley separating them. This would certainly be classified as undue concentration of casinos, as we already have 5 casinos in a 2-block area. I certainly do not have the funds to hire an attorney to come and represent me, nor do any of my neighbors. No neighborhood in Rapid City deserves 2 casinos within 100 feet of each other. I'm only here to ask you, please, do not let this happen. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll recognize Rich Huffman. Mr. Huffman.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Rich Huffman. I'm an attorney in Rapid City. I represent Steve Winia and Damon Reel, who are the applicants in this matter. I've been hoping to talk after Mr. Winia, but we obviously got our stuff turned in the wrong order. I apologize to that. We believe that this appeal, if not granted by the council, would be an arbitrary and capricious action subject to legal challenge. The issue on this is a conditional use permit. A conditional use permit is only for getting authority to have liquor in a specific area. So if you're going to talk concentration, you have to talk liquor. The evidence before the Planning Commission was that all of the casinos that Mr. Winia and Mr. Reel run only sell liquor or beer because they have to. It is the enabling statute to have a casino. The conditional use permit does not go to the casino, but goes to liquor. The evidence before the Planning Commission is that they sell less than 1 beer an hour in every establishment they own. Some of them, they sell a half a beer an hour. I would suggest that most neighborhoods on 1 block have people that consume 1 drink an hour during a day, which is more than this casino would have. The issue is there a problem? I would ask the police chief, are there any undue calls to the Winia Reel casinos? I suspect the answer is no, because they don't have a problem. The reason you're trying to regulate this is to regulate problems. Look at all the bars you have downtown. How many police calls do you have to them? Whoops. Yeah, you know, those are the ones you want to regulate. Those decisions are whether or not there's a concentration. If you look at the town itself, and in different segments of town, in this case, there is 1 casino within 100 feet, or liquor establishment. Everything else is over 500 feet away. If you get over on, look at my notes, well, downtown, you know how many are that. They're bunched in groups of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. And there's residents, people, they're residential. There are people living downtown in Rapid City. You go over to Robbinsdale, there are 3 of them right in a row that back up to a residential area, and there's 1 across the street, the Post 20, or yeah, I think it's whatever it is, American Legion Post. You know, you go into most of those places, Robbinsdale Lounge, you can look at the bar and see people consuming multiple beers an hour, and these establishments are consuming less than 1 an hour. You go to East North Street, there's a concentration of those in close to 500 feet, and they're all beer-consuming casinos. But this type of casino, the one that run by my client, are not beer-consuming casinos, don't have the inherent problems. Okay. Just look at the casinos as you drive around town. Most of the neighborhood casinos are very quiet. Absolutely nothing's happened. There's hardly any traffic going in and out. There's no problem to be solved here, and I believe any action you would have cannot be sustained by a court of law. There was an issue, I read the Planning Commission's minutes, I'm trying to figure out where they were coming from. They said there's inadequate screening. I know Mr. Winia offered to flip the building, put the back of the building to Indiana Street, or to 7th Street. I mean, how can you have inadequate screening? You get to determine what is adequate screening, and you just tell us what you want. we're willing to do it. And so I think you're heading down a slippery slope by denying this application and not granting the appeal. And I'm here to answer any questions if you want them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Huffman. We'll recognize Steve Winia. Mr. Winia?
Good evening, council members. My name is Steve Winia. I've been in the lottery business, commercial rental business for over 20 years. I bought this property in 2005, tore down 3 eyesores. There was a triplex and 2 duplexes on this property. I tore these old buildings down with the intention of building a brand new commercial building. And what I've proposed is to build a 4,000 square foot building and move 2 existing casinos that I have into a building that I own, property I own. 2 leased properties, I want to put them on my own property. So it would just be a swap. I'm moving 2 casinos into 1 building. The other 2,000 square foot of the commercial building would be leased out, so there would be 1 or more other businesses in this building as well. In 2006, my first attempt to obtain a conditional use permit for this property, planning department recommended approval on this property. That's very important. And the planning department, the planning commission then voted against me, voted to deny. A casino isn't allowed use on general commercial property. A casino will generate less traffic than almost any other commercial business that's allowed on general commercial property, and the other businesses do not require a conditional use permit. I offered, as Mr. Huffman said, I offered at the planning and zoning meeting, screening appeared to be an issue. We couldn't work through that. I offered to screen this property any ways that planning department seen fit. We couldn't, they had no answer for me. They couldn't answer how we could adequately screen this property. I am offering to also flip the building around and put the back of the building to 7th Street, so there's no way any of the neighbors can see any activity going on in the strip mall, in the commercial building with the casinos in it. I do not, as you can see from my beer sales reports, which you should have in your packets, they were in the planning and zoning packet, I don't sell enough alcohol in 15 hours a day to intoxicate 1 person. You sell 15 beers over, or 14 beers over a 15-hour period, and those figures I gave you, those go right on my state sales tax reports. We do not allow people to sit and drink alcohol. I don't build bars for them. I don't even put chairs at the barettes. They're not there to sit and drink alcohol. The employees are instructed if someone comes in to sit and drink a beer, they will get served 1 beer if they are not intoxicated, and then it's on their way. Now, this property's been general commercial property since 1970. Now, I'm not sure how many of those homeowners were there in 1970, but this has been zoned general commercial since 1970. I doubt if there's many. To find general commercial property in south end of Rapid City, you have to go to Highway 79 to the east. I don't even know how many miles that is. And to go to the south to find more general commercial property, you have to go to Catron Boulevard. Now, alcohol sales are allowed only on general commercial property. There's a reason that there's a concentration of alcohol sales in general commercial property. That's the only place basically we're allowed to put alcohol sales. the police department's never had a problem with any of my casinos. As I stated before, we do not, I repeat, we do not run bars. We are not a bar. I wouldn't be in the hard liquor business. I don't have time for it. I'm not going to fight with drunks. We have met the criteria set forth in the conditional use permit in their parameters. I believe this location should be approved for a casino and will also be occupied by one or more other businesses. Now, if you have questions for me, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have on this issue. Nothing at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Winiam. We do not have any further speaker request forms on items 65 through 72. Did I miss anyone who wanted to speak on items 65 through 72? Seeing none, do we have a motion to close the public comment period? We have a motion by Peterson, second by Roberts, to close the public comment period on items 65 through 72. All in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries. Items 65 through 67, these are continued items. Do we have a motion to continue these items to the date specified on the agenda? We have a motion by Brown, second by Mason, to continue items 65 through 67 in accordance to the date specified on the agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries. Item, let me see here. Item 68, alcohol licenses. We read this into the agenda, Mr. Mason.
Item 68, Rapid City Area Chamber of Commerce doing business as Rapid City Chamber of Commerce for a special event wine and malt beverage license for an event scheduled for August 23rd, 2011 at the Central States Fair. And I move for approval.
Motion by Mason, second by Brown for approval. This is actually in the consent, so all three of these items can be considered at the same time. Can we just vote on this one? It was closed. Yeah. All in favor of 68, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Items 69 and 70, assessment rolls. Pauline Sumption.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to pull 70 from the consent calendar, if that's the way you're going to take them, please.
Right. Item 69, Joel, you still have your light on. Would you like to speak? Okay. Alderman Mason, would you read item 69 to the agenda, please?
Item 69 is approved resolution number 2011 tag 080B, levying assessment for cleanup of miscellaneous property. And I make a motion for discussion.
Motion by Mason, second by Brown for approval. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries. Item 70, Pauline.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just needed to point out that number 295 on the assessment roll, that is for the Susan Campo Family Trust, actually needs to be removed from the assessment roll, as that is a personal residence, which is exempt from the bid assessment.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve with that exemption? We have a motion by Roberts and a second by Peterson. And we'll recognize Bonnie Peterson.
I don't know if Mr. Schmidt, but that spoke earlier about how he felt about the bid, and I just wanted to reiterate that the people of Rapid City have spoken, and it's our job to follow their desires on that. So, thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Item number 71, Alderman Mason.
Yes. Did you say 70 or 71? 71. 71 is appeal of the Planning Commission's decision on a request by Kennedy Design Group Incorporated for Steve Winia and Damon Reel for a conditional use permit to allow an on-sale liquor establishment. And I will make a motion for discussion.
What's your motion?
I'm sorry, motion to approve the staff recommendations? Sorry.
So your motion is to
Deny.
uphold the appeal or
Uphold the appeal as staff recommends.
uphold the appeal and deny the conditional use permit.
Right.
Okay.
Thanks.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Mason and a second by Peterson. Do we have any discussion? Bonnie Peterson.
I'm always eager just to run right in, see what kind of wall or how I find my foot in my mouth. We had gotten a lot of emails, phone calls, concerns from the people that not only live there in the residential area, but also work in that area. And I've listened to the comments that were made for the people that are for bringing this casino in, and I guess my take on this is that I would say that there is a big difference between someone moving into an area like downtown that sells alcohol compared to a business that moves into a residential area to sell alcohol. The people in the first place that move downtown or in areas that sell alcohol, they are choosing it and are aware of it. Whereas this business is wanting to sell alcohol and move into the neighborhood. So I think that's a big distinction between those two. It also sounds like the gentleman wants to move 2 casinos into this one building, which sounds like if his people follow him, that he'll probably also bring in twice the traffic. There has also, safety reasons, there's also been a rash of casino robberies lately. So for some reason, casinos are attracting the kind of people that we don't want to find in the residential areas. And then finally, about the threat of a lawsuit. I've been on the council for 1 year, and I was sued the first week. I was sued for something that took place when I wasn't even on the council. So I encourage my fellow councilmen not to be afraid. It's the lawyers' jobs to sue, but it's the council's job to stand up for our citizens and the people that are brave. I noticed that Twyla is having trouble walking, but yet this is so important to her that she came up here and waited and crutched her way up here. So it's our job as the council to stand up for the people that can't stand up for themselves, that can't afford a lawyer. And so again, I think that there is a high concentration of alcohol being sold in that area. There's also, they've stated about the casino being in that area. Public safety with the rash, I don't know, the police chief, if you know off the top of your head how many casino robberies we've had in this last year. But it seems like there's been certainly a big bump up in that, and I would think with the economy that's probably part of the reason why there is a big bump up. And then again, I'm going to stand up for the citizens on this vote, and I will be denying the appeal. Thank you.
Alderman Ron Sasso. Ron?
I agree. Feel that I believe that the Planning Commission had this correct. It appears there would be an adverse effect. There's not an adequate buffer zone for residents in that area, and I do agree. It's definitely an overstatement saying that there aren't problems from casinos. That's something that I know that there are concerns there, and the residents have made that made that loud and clear, their concerns. So I will be supporting the denial of the appeal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually have a few questions here for Mr. Winia, and I do apologize if I mispronounced your name. Sir, earlier you talked about that your attorney was discussing the amount of beers that your establishments serve. Is there any way that you can guarantee us that that's exactly the number that you're going to serve in perpetuity?
Sure. You want me to guarantee that, I can guarantee it.
So that's because the argument that I'm hearing is that that's exactly the amount that's going to be served, and that's why your establishment should be considered.
Sure. The most I sell, the absolute maximum I sell right now, which you have in your packet, is, I believe, 14 beers in a 15-hour period. That's the maximum out of all the 9 locations I gave you across all the way from East Rapid City to West Rapid City. And the fewest I sell is like 4 in a 14-hour period.
Appreciate that, sir. And I hope you understand my skepticism, but in looking at a statement to say that this is exactly how many I'm going to sell from now and from forward, there's a lot of questions of how that's going to be done. The other question that I had is when you talk about that your establishment generates less traffic than any other commercial place, what are you basing that on?
I said almost any other commercial business that's allowed on general commercial property.
Okay, I'm sorry, I must have misunderstood.
And, I mean, I can allow a medical office. I can bring you numbers on how many people I keep track of every day, 365, how many people I have through the door. My employees count the number of people through the door. And we'll run anywhere from 20 people in a 14-hour shift to the most we run is like 50 people a day in a 15-hour shift.
Appreciate that. Because with all due respect, sir, there is some concern in looking over some of these staff reports. And while there's been some discussion about the undue concentration related to problems, one of the things that I am concerned about that has not been mentioned is the undue concentration that yields traffic and the impact in the neighboring property values that can have on the residents. So that is something that I am personally concerned about. And your statement of saying that this generates less traffic, I guess that is something that I am looking at, and I need to know that the amount of traffic that your establishment is going to generate will not, detrimentally affect the property values to your neighbors, because hence that's kind of the reason we're having zoning regulations is to prevent detrimental effects. So I am curious, do you have any information specifically related to, and maybe I've missed it somewhere in here, but do you have any information related to your projected traffic count and what that could be like?
No, I don't believe I have anything in there for a traffic count, although I could have gotten the information on customers per day in every location, every one of the 9, because I keep track of that every day. That goes back 10 to 15 years. I started keeping track from like the second year we started opening these businesses, and I've been running casinos for 17 years. I keep track of the number of customers through the business every day, 365. I've got those calendars going back in all these businesses. I do have that information.
Right, and just to ask one more time, just for clarification, you gave me a number of about 20 people per, what was that?
20 people in a 14-hour shift, and that number will go up as high as 50 people. The busiest casinos will run 50 people per day, and that's a double casino.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Sure.
We'll recognize Alderman Ron Sasso. Alderman Sasso?
One other point that wanted to cover as well is that There is an apartment nearby with, that's serving young men with cognitive disabilities. And one of the problems when you look at something such as gambling and the reinforcement schedule with gambling and the intermittent payoffs is that often it's very easy for a person to become addicted to that. Now, if a person already has cognitive disabilities such as poor impulse control, poor problem-solving, decision-making, the likelihood of that person becoming a gambling addict is much higher, significantly higher, because they do not have that same level of impulse control to say, okay, no, I'm going to take a step back. I'm not going to do that today. So it really perpetuates that disability further, pushes the person into problems with financial difficulties and ultimately can lead to crime from the person deciding that they need more money to gamble, they've lost it, and then make further poor decisions. So that's another reason that I believe, considering where that's at and where there's an apartment located nearby, it would be a poor placement for that with lots of adverse effect. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Sasso. We do not have any, actually we do. Alderman Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. This is in my ward, so I have a great concern for this. I do respect Mr. Huffman's practice, and I admire his work that he's accomplished. However, I've got to side with the residents in this area. They brought these concerns to me some time ago, and I have great respect for what they have brought forward to me. I've also got some other questions and concerns that I don't want to bring up tonight, but because I need some more background and research on this. But right now, I'm supporting the denial for the appeal. With those comments, I'll yield the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. And Alderman Mason's light is not working. He would like to speak. Alderman Mason.
Thank you, Mayor. And yes, that is correct. My light is broken. I do have some questions, actually, for Mr. Dale Tech, if I may. Mr. Tech, when the statements that have been made about that casino traffic is comparable to other commercial enterprises, how would you, in your professional capacity, respond to that? Would you say that's an accurate statement?
I'm not in a position to answer that with any knowledge. I would have to review trip generation reports for specific businesses. I can't comment on that at this time.
I appreciate that. I guess what I'm looking for is to look and just try and gather some information here based on the information that we have been given, to also look at what the impact is going to be on residential abutting properties. And I guess that's something that I am looking at, because while I agree that on a societal standpoint, I can understand some of the comments that have been made about the social ills, and there's arguments for that. But the one thing that I have looked at over a period of time here that I am taking concern with is the vicinity and the proximity to the current residential residents that are currently there. And furthermore, as Mr. Winnie pointed out, that we can see up to 50 people per day from a double casino. My concern is that logic has told me, and as Mr. Winnie and his attorney have both affirmed, that they're within 100 to 200 feet of another casino. What I'm concerned about is that, taken in conjunction, both casinos, if that's going to generate enough traffic to cause problems with especially where this location is. Because in looking at the map, my concern is that this isn't off of a major arterial, that you're back in off of Mount Rushmore Road, and that the amount of 50 cars per day or more coming into this narrow street that's designed as a residential street I am concerned about the material impact that that could have on those residents, especially the property value. Based on those reasons and that evidence that was given to us by yourself, sir, I am inclined to uphold the Planning Commission. And frankly, based on some of the answers that you've provided me, and I just wanted to state my reasoning based on a previous comment, why the reasons and the evidence that I am basing my decision on. Thank you.
Alderman Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to offer an alternate motion to send this back to the Planning Commission based on the fact that we have so many questions tonight with so few answers.
We have a motion by Davis and a second by Alderman Mason to refer this to the City Planning Commission. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Roll call, please.
Mason. Doyle. Sasso. Davis. Peterson. Roberts. Brown. Wright. Nordstrom.
Aye.
Carries.
Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Joel Landine.
Thank you, Mayor. I will say I do have some concerns about whether or not it's legally appropriate to send it back to the Planning Commission. There is a process in place for appeal of conditional use permits. The Planning Commission has acted. They've denied it. It's been appealed to the City Council. It's now in your domain. However, I've looked at the ordinance quickly, and it says that as long as there's 7 days between the action and the notice of hearing, that you can hear the appeal. So I believe it would be appropriate perhaps to continue it to a later council meeting. I don't know that you could continue it indefinitely, obviously, but I think at least one, at most probably 2 meetings would be reasonable. If you have some additional questions, perhaps think of an alternative means of getting answer or at least directing what it is those questions are you'd like answered, and we could try to have answers back to you by the next council meeting. But I do have concerns about taking this back legally to the Planning Commission.
Alderman Davis.
That would be my intent of my motion, would be to continue it to the first meeting in September.
Since we had some no votes, we should probably have a motion to reconsider that.
Okay.
Do you agree, Joel? Jason?
That would be a motion to reconsider first, I guess.
Okay. Do we have a second to the motion to reconsider? Second by, motion by Davis, second by Doyle to reconsider. And, well, Richie, is your discussion on the motion to reconsider?
I'll cancel that, Mayor. Thank you.
All right. All in favor of the motion to reconsider?
Aye.
Aye? Oh, I can't vote anymore. All right. Sorry about that. Old habits die hard. So we're, do we have a motion?
The motion would then be the motion would be to continue this to the first meeting in September, first council meeting in September.
We have a second. We have a motion by Davis and a second by Roberts. We'll recognize Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a clarification on the questions. I know I've got a couple more, but where should those questions go to? Who gets to answer those questions? Thank you.
My suggestion, Mr. Nordstrom, is that you send your questions to Brett Limbaugh, our Growth Management Director. Any further discussion? Everyone understands the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Item 72, Alderman Mason.
Item 72 is a request by Chamberlain Architects for a vacation of right-of-way. It's located at a portion of the alley right-of-way, and I move to approve.
We have a motion by Mason, second by Roberts for approval of item 72. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Pauline, the bill list.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The total bill list before you is $6,808,284.73.
We have a motion by Davis and a second by Doyle to approve. Pauline, hold up that stack of papers that you have there. Folks, that's how much paper we're going to be saving at every meeting going forward by Pauline staying in her chair and pulling up the PDF on her computer rather than going down there to present it. So it's just an example of the work that we're doing to save taxpayer money. So, we do have a motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item 74.
Actually, I believe the first would be go into executive session. The purpose of the executive session would be consult with legal counsel regarding the price of property being marketed by the city. When we come out of executive session, we would ask for action, which would be item number 74.
Do we have a motion? Motion by Brown, second by Peterson to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing sale of property as permitted by STCL 1-25-2. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're in executive session.
What I appreciate is this.
Do we have a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
We have a motion by Davis and a second by Brown to come out of executive session. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. And we'll recognize our city attorney, Jason Green. Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I recommend the council approve a motion to accept the city attorney's recommendation on item CA 2011-003.
We have a motion by Wright and a second by Doyle. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Do we have a motion to adjourn? We have a motion by Doyle and a second by Nordstrom. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.